Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I am Mr. Kadim Khan and I am a lecturer in the Institute of Computing, Quart University of Science and Technology. Today we will take lecture number 9 of the subject of object-oriented analysis and design, in which we will explain the concept of objects and classes in object-oriented analysis and design. This is the discussion agenda. It contains the topics of what is an object, the environment of the object, object orientation, object oriented analysis and design steps, which include different steps of finding the objects, organizing the objects, describing how objects interact with each other, defining the operations of the objects, and at the end we have the Java programming examples in the Eclipse IDE. Now, what is the objects? Basically, the object is a software with variables and related methods. So objects have two different components. The first one is called variables. The variables are representing the data inside the object. And the second one is called the methods. Methods are the functions which will operate on the variables. So the methods are those operations which will process the variable or the data. In any object-oriented technology, for example Java, C++, or C#.NET, the objects are the key for understanding these object-oriented technologies. In the daily life, we see different types of the objects around us. For example, horse is an object because horse can run and horse has the color. Similar, disk is also the object. Television set is also an object in our houses, and similarly the bicycle is also an object because bicycles has variables. For example, the color of the bicycle, the size of the bicycle, number of wheels in the bicycle, etc. And bicycle have certain related methods. For example, bicycle can run, bicycle can be stopped, bicycle can be repaired. These are the functions of the bicycles. Now, software objects are modeled after the real-world objects in the way that they have their state and the behavior. The states are called the variables and the behaviors are called their methods. So the objects maintains its states in a variable representing the data members, and similarly they have their behavior with the methods. The behavior or the methods are called the member functions of the objects. Now, this is the illustration of the objects in a visual representation. For example, this is the whole object, and there are variables and methods inside the objects. This is just a graphical representation of the objects. Now, for example, we have the bicycle example of the objects from the daily life. So the bicycle have number of different variables, and also the bicycle have different functions of the behaviors. For example, they have the fifth gear. They have 90 revolution per minute of the speed. Similarly, they have 10 miles per hour, also the another speeds. 90 RPM is in fact the revolution of the wheels. They have their methods as well. For example, change the gears is the method. Apply the brake is also a method. Similarly, change the cadence is also a method. Now we have also another example of the objects. For example, students have their states, name, gender and age. So name, gender and age are the variables, and students have their behaviors. For example, students perform the reading and they perform the writing and they can play. So these are their behaviors. Similarly, bicycle have the straight current gear, two wheels bicycles, number of gears, and they have their behavior braking, accelerating, slowing down, and changing the gears. Now in daily life, we also have another objects. For example, computer is also an object. Similarly, different slots in the office are also different objects. Telephone set is also the objects. Similarly, this is a folder which is also an object. This is a floppy disk which is also an object, and our glass is also the objects. Similarly, this is the bed in the room is also objects, and the cup of tea is also an object. And similarly, daily life we take different stuff for eating. For example, different stuff includes the water, the glass, and the bread. These are the different sort of the objects. Now we can represent the objects in the objects diagram. So the object is instantiated from its classifier, also called the class in general. So the object is the instant of the class. Log is the instant of the logger class. Now objects can communicate with the other classes. For example, here user and manager is the interface class, and the objects interacts with the interface class. Now the interaction is from the one directional. That is, the data is in fact flowing from the user manager objects towards the log object. And also this interface class is connected with the anonymous objects with the 5 instances. You can see we have not provided any name here. That is the anonymous class. Now this objects with the cookie manager, and its name is the com.abc.user, and it is instantiated from the cookie manager. That means it is inherited. Now here this is the inheritance symbol. It is inherited from the cookie manager class, and this object has its data members and member functions, and this object is in fact communicating with the login control com.abc.user, and it is inherited from the login control class, and it has only its data member are the variables, while this object has the set of different variables and also different sort of the functions are the methods. Now there are different types of the symbols, plus and minus, and similarly hash symbol as well. This represents the access specifier of these attributes. That means this plus means that they are public and minus means that they are private. Similarly, this function is a public function. Create user cookies with the parameters of user comma boolean remember mode me, and it is in fact taken from the cookie class. Now this is a bidirectional communication, while this is one directional communication. Now object orientation. When we perform object oriented analysis, first we have to perform the analysis, then we have to do the design, and at the end the programmers will implement the design into a certain tools and technologies, for example Java. So in object oriented analysis we investigate the problem. The problem here means the user problem. So first step is to, in the object oriented analysis, we have to investigate that what is the problem. The problem is the user problem which the user want to solve through the software. And in the next steps, we perform the designing. In the designing, we perform the logical solution of the problem. So here we perform the object-oriented designing. And in the object-oriented designing, we perform the solution in terms of interacting software objects. So here we will specify how different objects communicate with each other and how they perform or pass the data, and also how they share the functionalities with each other, and also how they will call or pass the parameters. In the next steps, the implementation is performed smoothly, in which the programmer takes the analysis and designs and perform the practical implementation or programming of the coding. So here, object-oriented programming is performed using the coding in the object-oriented programming languages. We have different sort of languages, for example, Java language, C# language, and C++ language, which are the object-oriented programming language. Now, object-oriented analysis and design. When we perform the object-oriented analysis and design, we have to pass from these four different steps. These four different steps are used for the object-oriented analysis and designing. The first one is called the finding the objects, in which we will find out different objects of the user problem. For example, if the student want to perform the registration, so student is one object. Similarly, the course will be the another object. Similarly, the teacher will register with the teacher, so the teacher will be the third object. Next, we will organize different objects with each other. Here, the organization of the objects means that how the objects will interact with each other, how the objects will be look and how they will be linked with each other. Next, we will describe how objects will communicate with each other. It means that here we will define different types of parameter passings, how they will call each other, and how they will share their coding with each other. The next one is defining the operations of the objects. Here we will define different sort of the functionalities of the objects. The functionality of the objects will be provided in the third sections of the objects. First section will be the name of the object, second will be the variables of the object, and the third will be the different operations of the objects. Now we will explain each and every one in detail here. Number one, finding the objects. In this section or in this steps, we will first find out all the objects in the problem. Next, we will perform the natural occurrences of the entities, physical objects in the objects. Here, we will define different sort of the entities which will be physically available uh, in the software. The next one will be conceptual and abstract idea about the objects. Here, we will make our mind about the existence of the objects, that what is the objects, what are their attributes, and how they will in fact um, perform the or solve the particular problem. The next will be the to define different classes in the objects. Here we will specify different sort of the classes, that whether this object belongs to the active or passive class, or if it is the temporary or permanent or persistent objects, or if it is the part of the problem or it is the whole system, if it is the generic object or the specific object, or it is the private or the public objects. The active and passive means that the object is inactive. Active means that it is completely automated. Automated objects here means that it is in fact realizing the situation that whether a certain stimuli or the event will occur, then it will be executed by itself. And the passive means that the object will be not intelligent. When the user will interact the objects, then the object will perform its functions. Temporary means that the objects can be destroyed, while permanent means that objects cannot be destroyed or deleted. And the persistent means that the object is persistently existing, that the object is always be there. Parts mean that this is just one small parts or a unit of the problem, while the whole means that the problem is not too much big. So that's why these objects will fully cover the user problem. The generic means that the object is generic and it is in fact a general object, while the specific means that the object is specific and it is only a particular sort of the objects which will be specific to the particular community, while the generic means that it is generic for the whole world. For example, student is a generic object, but student of Institute of Computing is the specific object. The object may be private or public. Private here means that the objects cannot be accessed outside of the class, but the public means that the objects can be only accessible inside of the class. And that means that objects can be accessible everywhere in the problem, while private means that objects can be accessed only in the particular class. Now the second step is to organize the objects. Here we will organize the objects using ASA or HASA concepts. So ASA means that it is similar objects instances. For example, we can say that child is a human or student is a human. ASA means that it belongs to the particular generic object, that the specific objects belongs to a general objects. While interacting relation between the objects, here we will specify the particular relations. Or it is the whole or the part of the relation. So here we will perform has a object. So has a relation specify that whether it is a whole object or it is the part of the big problem. So has a relation specifies that if it is a particular instances or if it is belongs to a big community of the objects. For example, we can say that bicycle has a wheel. Similarly, we can say that student has a date of birth. So here the has a relation will specify that this object has a number of relations with another objects. Or for example, the particular object has how many and what types of the attributes. Next one, we will specify describing how different objects interacts with each other. Here we will show the interaction or the relations of the objects with each other. Interaction means that how different objects will communicate with each other. So here we will identify how the objects fits into the systems. So uses of the scenarios, unique situations, we will specify the objects communications with each other. So object communication will be performed through the object interfaces. Object interfaces here means that we will specify different sort of the refined relations of the objects with each other. For example, we have the association relation, or we have the aggregate relations, or we have certain sort of the inheritance relations with the between different objects. So here we will specify how the objects communicate with each other in a particular model. Next one is the defining the operations of the objects. So the defining of operations means that here we will specify different functionalities of the objects. That what is the function of the objects. Here we will perform the object implementation and testing of the objects. Operation performed by an objects, behavior of the objects, and specific interfaces having the external and internal functions. So in object operations, we will specify different sort of the behavior or the operations of the objects. Behavior means that what will be the objects, what will objects perform for the particular end users. Operations means that what are the functionalities of the objects. Here we will specify interfaces. Interfaces means that how the objects will interact with each other through their interface class. Interfaces are certain classes, also called the interface class, which can be accessed into our objects, having external and internal functionalities. External functionalities are those functionalities which are defined outside of the problem. For example, interface class which is residing in the web systems. For example, Google Map is the interface class which has the external functions, and internal function are those functions which are internally into our implemented into our softwares. Objects with a complex functionalities should be partitioned into some simple objects. For example, if we have an object with a very complex functionalities, then we will break down these functions or objects into multiple sub objects, and then we will implement these sub objects independently. This will also perform the quick implementation because when we perform the unit by unit development, we can divide the unit into our teams and the teams can work independently on each unit. Now, how we will create objects? To create the objects, we will instantiate the objects. By instantiating means that class A object, this is the object belonging from the class A. This is called declaration, and then we will perform the instantiation. In instantiation, we will use the equal and new operator for instantiating the object. Here, obj is equal to new class A. This is the instant of the class A. Obj is the instant of the class A, and class A is the constructor. And when the constructor is called, automatically data member and member function will be assigned to the object. This is just one line of declaration and instantiation. Class A object name is equal to new class A, which is the constructor of this class A, and obj is the object. Remember, dear students, that obj will be written in such a way that the variable rules will be applied on the object instantiation. Now, this is the example of the objects. First, we have declared the public class, maths class. Then, there is the functions inside the class int sum, int a, int b, return a plus b. This is another function. In difference, it takes also two different parameters of int a, int b. Return a minus b. It will differentiate or subtracts first number from the second number. And then we have int product, int a, int b. It will produce the product of a and b. And public, then we have the public static void main. Here, this is the one functions which will be in every objects or in every class, public static void main, and the program execution starts from here. Maths class object is equal to new math class. Here we have instantiated the object. Now system.out.println, it will print the line sum of 5 and 6 is obj.sum 5 comma 6. Now obj.sum 5 comma 6 will call the sum function, and the second one, difference of 5 and 2, is obj.diff 5 comma 2, it will call the difference function, and obj.product 5 comma 2, it will call the another function, and last one, square root of 100, is math.square root 100. This will call the built-in class math of the built-in function. Math.square root means it will perform the square root of 100, which will return 10. Now this will be the output. Sum of 5 and 6 is 11. Difference of 5 and 2 is 3. Product of 5 and 2 is 10. And square root of 110 is square root of 100 is 10. Now dear students, we will implement this code in our Eclipse IDE. To implement this this example, you have to press the escape button. After escape button, go to your Eclipse IDE, click on your Eclipse IDE. When you click on the Eclipse IDE, in a short while, the Eclipse IDE will be available to you. This is my Eclipse IDE for Java programming of the 2020 version. You can install this Eclipse IDE very easily. In the meanwhile, this Eclipse IDE will be available for us, and we will perform our examples here. Now, here I will tell you how you can create the projects here. Just click on the file menu, click on the new, and click on the Java project. Here you provide the valid name of your projects. For example, that is math operations is my project name. Math operations. Click on the next and click on the finish. When you will click on the next, you will see that the math operation object will be created. For example, this is created on your left side of your pen, and src folder will be created. Next, click on finish. When you click on finish, just expand this math operations folders. Right click on the src folder, go to the new menu and create new class. Here you will provide the class names. Our class name in our code is maths class, so it should be exactly this name. So here maths class. Now if you want to create the public static void main, also you want to create the constructor here, and also you want to create the inherited abstracts method, so you will check all these. Also, if you want to create the generate comments, then you will click on this. Now click on finish. When you will click on finish, the code will be created for you. You can see that all of the code almost is created. Now go to your slides, and first you have to copy this section and place it on your full code here. And now open the slides again and copy this side of the code and then paste it here. Now our code is completed. Now we will execute and see our output here. Now click on this green buttons, or for example I have clicked here. Now this is the output. Sum of 5 and 6 is 11, difference of 5 and 2 is 3, product of 5 and 2 is 10, and square root of 100 is 10.0. Okay, student, this is the end of the lectures. If you have any question, you can ask through the email. My email is in the footer section of the slides. That is m.kadeem@kust.edu.pk. Thank you very much.